6:32, I'd like to call this meeting of the Old Saybrook Police Commission to order. Please join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Do we have any comments from the public? Do we have any comments from the virtual public? Please raise your hand.
No hands raised.
All right. Let's go directly to the meeting minutes. First, the regular meeting of November 27, 2023. I'll entertain a motion to approve those as submitted.
I'll move that forward.
Second,
Second, well, he said second. Mark said second, sorry.
all right. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Special meeting, January 10, 2024. I invite a motion to approve those minutes as submitted.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Finally, special meeting, January 11, 2024. I invite a motion to approve those minutes as submitted.
So moved. A second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Correspondence, the chair has none to report. Does anyone else?
There's one letter from the Police Commissioners Association of Connecticut. So I'll get that around to you. Do that. Thank you.
Wait, does he read it first?
We can scan it and send it.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, let's move on to executive reports. Chief, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everyone. Good to see you in person. Unlike the last couple meetings, so I appreciate you dealing with that. I also appreciate the individual well wishes. That was very, very nice. Renee, good to see you. You're feeling better as well?
Yes.
All right, good. Excellent. We have a very busy night ahead of us. I'm very, very pleased to report that I'll be presenting later on in executive session 4 candidates for 4 open positions. So tonight will be hopefully a great night for the commission as well as the department. If everyone is successful, that'll fill all the vacancies with the exception of one, which is being reserved for the future second in command position. So we'll be really, really happy to do that. We'll start off first with the fiscal 25 budget process. So the budgets that were approved by the police commission have been forwarded to the Board of Selectmen. The finance director actually watched our meeting live, so we thank Leanne for that. And she made the changes the next day and was able to submit that. If we do some hiring tonight, it may actually affect that budget, which we'll talk a little bit later, but it will affect it in such a manner that we'll be decreasing our ask because everyone that's being presented tonight would be a new hire that would all go to the police academy. I think we had one position in there that was planned for a lateral hire. So we'll actually be able to reduce the budget later on this evening if we wind up doing that. For the fiscal 2024 operating budget, Jen passed out, and Jill, thank you very much for picking up on it. There were 2 minor errors. One was in the Old Saybrook Police Fund and one was in the DARE Fund. Deposits and withdrawals were flip-flopped. I think that's the best way to describe it. So I guess it's better being that way than the opposite way. So we have more money than what we thought in both of those off-budget accounts. So you have those updated sheets. I have reviewed the existing operating budget. I have absolutely positively no concerns about anything at this point, but we'll certainly entertain any questions that any commissioners have.
We are more than halfway through the year and on target.
Yes, I mean, I think, some of the stuff that comes out at the beginning of the year has come out. But I think we're right along with what our spending plan should be at this point.
I just have a comment. The 4% budget increase that we presented to the Board of Finance, I think some Board of Finance members may seem to think that that's a little on the high side, given rebound for residents, et cetera, et cetera. But I have to say that within that budget, there was every increase in there. I could say that I understand the reason for it and why those increases were made. Particularly if you're looking at the current budget, There's certain things that I know you adjusted, like the degree stipends were increased in the budget based on current information. So I really do think that it was well presented in how everything that we increased is there, increased for a reason.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, look, no one likes spending money. I mean, I went grocery shopping with Heather the other day and the prices are out of control. No one likes to spend the money, but in some cases you have to. And we present a very lean budget, right? So when the commission deliberated, you saw for multiple years in a row that almost 90% of our budget has to do with personnel expenditures that are contractual in nature. So sometimes people in the community or on other boards and commissions say, I don't like how much that person makes. We can all agree that we don't like it, but that's the contractual responsibility of the town. And I think that sometimes we don't do a very good job, and I appreciate you bringing this up, Joe, is that we don't separate our personal feelings with our professional responsibilities, right? So when you're the fiduciary for the town of Old Saybrook, you might not like what's in front of you, but if that's what's required, then that's what you have to endorse. So I appreciate you bringing it up. I think that's an important point that I don't think we make often enough. So thank you for that. Okay, to go on to personnel matters, Mr. Chairman?
Please do.
Okay, so we have had one resignation. Mr. Leach, who was with us only for a couple weeks, who did sustain a minor injury during training. He decided that he no longer wanted to be a full-time police officer. We talked about him going part-time, but I just did not see a return in our investment for that. So I'm not bringing you that possibility. I'll send around his brief resignation notice, but his vacancy is one of the vacancies that we hope to fill later on this evening. When we go into executive session later, we're going in for personnel matters. That'll be for a multitude of different personnel matters. So I don't know if that S needs to be added or if it's already on the agenda, but it'll be a couple other matters that I'll have to discuss with you. Let's see what it says. Employee matter. Yes. So I don't know, Mr. Chairman, if you want to change that or if that's just.
I think we can live with it.
You can live with that. Okay, great. Fantastic. I appreciate that. Going on to professional development, two things. One that I've been dying to talk to you about. So as many of you know, I began my pursuit to obtain my master's degree, which is one of those things that's been in my contract for a long time, and commissioners over time, both on this current commission and for the last 15 years, have been saying, go back to school, go back to school, go back to school. And I've always prioritized everyone else. But I'm pleased to announce that as of last fall, I did return back to the classroom at the University of New Haven, virtual, thank God. And so what my contract requires is after I take a course and I successfully complete it, I'm supposed to come to you before I issue myself, reimbursement for the course and the materials and stuff like that. And we haven't had a regular meeting to fit this in since September. So I am eager to take care of some credit card bills, as you can imagine. So University of New Haven, great school, and they also provide 50% off tuition for public safety personnel. So not only am I able to do this, we're doing it at a huge cost savings, which is fantastic. So I currently have, I think I'm probably the only public employee that has to hand their report card out to their bosses, but I'll pass this over. We did 3 courses in the fall semester, 2 courses in an intersession, and now I'm in 3 courses now. Currently have a 4.0. I don't know if that's going to stay that way or not, but I guess that's good. So you can pass that around. That's my degree completion plan.
Teacher comments?
There are no teacher comments. Pleasure to have in class. Sometimes too talkative.
Right?
Yeah, I can read you. It's going to be the same comments. Nothing's really changed. I've just gotten a little bit more gray and gained a few pounds, but I think that the chattiness is about the same in the classroom. And so I'll be looking to do my reimbursement, which is just a tad bit over $8,000. And then when I'm done with the spring semester, I'll be able to come back again and, we can review the spring semester and the cost for that. So the application fee was $300, $208 in books, and then the rest in that 50% off tuition. So if no one has any objection, I'll be.
They still use books.
They do. So some of them do. What's interesting? A couple of my classes, the teachers, probably this is bad to reveal, they photocopy books.
Yeah.
And then post the PDF of the photo, but like you, I'm a paper guy. So I gotta print out all those, photocopies of books. It's kind of nuts, but.
Is it an accelerated program or standard?
I would say standard. I think I'm accelerating it. So I plan on doing it in 12 months, and you'll see that as one of my executive goals as we get towards that. But yeah, I'm gonna do it within a year.
Chief, I assume that we don't need to take any official action.
I don't think so. I mean, that's not what it says. It says I have to report to the commission. So I don't think you have to say, yes, go ahead and reimburse yourself, but this is a requirement of my reporting, so.
For what it is worth, I think the commission applauds and urges our finance director to keep prompt.
Thank you, yes, I appreciate that. And then, I can keep you updated as we go along and what we're taking for classes, but everything's very relevant, quite frankly, to, my current job. And, it is a reminder that there's a bigger world out there than Old Saybrook, right? I think sometimes you can get caught in the noise of your local job and forget that there is a big, big world out there. So I actually have already been approached by some of the faculty about actually teaching after I get my degree. So I think that's pretty cool. And again, it's nice to become a little bit more worldly. So to all those commissioners that encouraged me to do it that aren't here, I told them that they were wrong, they were right, and we're doing it.
I look forward to the next one.
Thank you very much. You can take that one home, put it on your fridge.
I will.
And also the professional development update, I just want to let the commission know, you folks know that every year, the entire department goes through an active shooter training that we partner with the school district for. We do that every year before the school academic year starts. Sad that we have to do that, but very necessary, and proud that we do that. That has always involved our dispatchers and still involves our dispatchers. But we sought out for some dispatcher specific training to responding to active incidents like that. And so we brought an instructor in. Our dispatch supervisor, Dan Adams, actually sought this out for me and coordinated it, which I really appreciate it. The course was called Dispatch Response to Active Killers, or the DRAC course. And it was actually taught by someone who was there at Sandy Hook as a law enforcement professional. So it has a direct, effective connection along with obviously the cognitive experience that I wanted our dispatchers to get. And there was a psychomotor component to it where they did scenarios in class. So I'll pass this around. This is kind of like the brochure for the class for you guys to take a look at. But it was a very, very good class, 2 days, again, done locally in our own training room. So we're very, very proud to be able to do that. You have been given our activity report. So if anybody has any questions on that, and I think, I would say Jackie and Mark, maybe at some point we could get together and I can kind of go over that activity report with you so you know kind of what you're looking at.
Sure.
Kind of decipher it, bring some English context to it, and then that way, if you have any other questions, you'll actually understand what I'm putting in front of you each month. So let's do that in the next couple weeks.
Yeah.
If we could. And Jackie, we had made an agreement. We're gonna sit down, talk a little bit about the budget.
Yeah.
And the process of how it's put together and stuff like that. And if you're interested in doing that, Mr. Chairman, it's okay. I can meet with the two of them, right? Yeah, there's no issue with that.
No reason.
Yeah, great. That's better. One meeting is better than two. Yeah.
True.
It's not a quorum, so.
Right, that's
Yeah.
perfect.
My observation looking at the activity report is that even though we've been understaffed, we haven't been underperforming.
Oh, absolutely not. No. And I usually bring it up at the end of the meeting, but I'll bring it up now because you brought it up. So thank you. Our staff's doing a phenomenal job. Everyone putting in the extra hours that need to be put in. There's very, very little grumblings about that. It's a complete team effort. And I appreciate it. And that's, from the least senior patrolman to the highest ranking individual in the building, everyone's pitching in and we're getting the job done. It's such a difference. We have a really great team now. And when you come to work happy, you're happy to be at work. And so over my 15 years, I have found that if you're a miserable person and you show up to work miserable, you'll think work is miserable. And then you spread that misery around. And so as a law enforcement agency, we spend a lot of time going to negative type calls. And so if you come in negative and you deal with negative, you become negative. And so, really, really happy with this group right now. They do not have that mantra. And it's refreshing. Very, very, very refreshing.
You sure are standing out in the cold a lot.
They are standing out in the cold a lot. Yep, $75 an hour to stand out in the cold. So
Is that what they get?
that for the private duty jobs. Yeah, they make master sergeant rate when they're doing a private duty job.
I tell you, I feel like driving through town and giving them coffee, they look so.
I'm sure they would
They
appreciate
look
that.
so cold.
Yeah. So we're one of the very few towns that requires them to stand outside of their car. So if you just think or become cognizant of it, if you're driving to other communities and you see police officers on private duty jobs, if they're not actively directing traffic, you'll find them sitting in their car. And I find that to be insulting to the amount of money that they're making. So there are times when it's, inclement weather that we say, go ahead, obviously sit in your car, but you can't be attentive to what's going on. If you're sitting in your car, listening to the radio, listening to a podcast. So we want our officers to be out there attentive and watching and ready to assist if they need to. And so that's why they stand outside of their car in an old Saybrook. You'll find that not everyone appreciates that, but that is one of my expectations that I have. Any questions on anything I've covered so far?
No, thank you.
Okay, okay to do the 2024 executive goals?
That would be the next item.
All right, we'll pass those out. Yeah, can you give one to Carl? Jim, would you mind hitting the other side of the table, please? Okay, so I will go over them, quickly with you, and then my proposal will be, Mr. Chairman, and I think we'll do that the same way, is maybe a quarterly update.
That's good.
Is that, you think that works? So I think once a quarter, I can update the commission on where we are with the goals. And that way, by the time we reach December, the report is pretty much filed because we've done it 3 times already. So I've received great advice that last year I had too many executive goals and I should have less executive goals. So I think maybe I have 1 or 2 left. Because I think goals are important. So number 1, and segueing from what we talked about earlier, goal number 1 is successfully completing a master's in public administration program with a concentration in public safety. So well on my way for that. I hope to be done, following the fall semester. I'm going to try to do what I can to even do it a little bit earlier than that. That certainly should be accomplished this year. The second one is a continuation of last year's goal. Only kind of raising the bar again. So lead a team of professionals to prepare for an accreditation assessment and attain State of Connecticut Police Officer Standards and Training Council Tier 3 accreditation, and then the IAED dispatch accreditation. We didn't nail dispatch accreditation this year because we had turnover in the dispatch center. So the rules have changed and you need 7 solid months of perfect scores to be considered for accreditation. And the software randomly picks calls. And there's no excusing a training call. So if the software randomly picks a call of somebody who's in training and it wasn't done perfectly, it affects negatively on the overall score. And so we've talked to the academy about that to say, I don't know if that's the most fair way of approaching it. So we're in discussions, but we're also on our way to completing a solid, good 7 months. So hopefully we'll see that. Tier 3, if everyone remembers, we don't actually need for a couple years, but we will hopefully be getting that this year. As everyone knows, we're at Tier 2. Goal 3, revitalize and restart the Police Explorer program, a total carryover from last year. I have assigned Patrolman Simpson and Patrolman O'Connell. They are our 2 new Explorer advisors. They've already gone to some training conferences and training classes. And just as of last night, they have given me their proposal on how to restart the program. So my guess is we'll be officially restarting somewhere towards the end of February, and then a full launch this spring. So the goal would be to have a couple kids on board for the summer, so they can spend some time at the station, getting training, participating in events, et cetera, et cetera. The 4th goal, work with the police commission to bring the evaluation matter to resolution one way or the other. So by December 31st, we should either decide on an evaluation instrument or we should report to the community, we have no agreement. We can't come to an agreement. One way or the other, let's just make an announcement by December 31st. We're about 14 months away from political season again, and I'm sure this will be a topic of discussion. And so I figured, let's just bring it to resolution once and for all by December 31st. I don't know what that resolution will be, but it certainly can range to a complete agreement on evaluation to, as I've said, absolutely positively no agreement. But let's bring it to resolution.
We might advance that date,
What do you mean?
shoot for earlier than,
Well, we could, but I think we're gonna have a lot going on in the next couple of months. Next one is work with the police commission to develop the framework for department staffing and structure plan. So in my budget enhancement memo, I talked about adding lieutenant positions and creating an active middle management. And I think that the commission needs to understand why I feel that way. So my plan is over the year's time is to bring different folks in to meet with the commission during executive session, to talk to them about their jobs, individual jobs and individual performance, which is why it can be done in executive session. But I think you need to hear from the sergeants about what they do and how they do it. And, how time consuming it is, what their constraints are, what their work equity is like, et cetera, et cetera. So I think over a year's time, we'll be able to hear from all the department members. And then maybe by the conclusion of the year before next year's budget, we can unveil a staffing and structure plan that we all feel very comfortable about based on our own research. The next one is work internally and with the police commission on leadership succession planning. I think it's very, very important that we talk about this. We started this discussion kind of during the budget process when we talked about establishing and making sure that there was funding in the police commission's budget for a second in command position, whether that be a captain or a deputy chief, whatever that is. But I think that there's a lot of work that we need to do on that. We need to talk about what we're looking for, what type of person we're looking for, what those credentials would be, what a contract would look like. I think there's a lot of discussion to be had. And so I thought by making that as part of one of my executive goals, we can kind of push that along. And succession planning just doesn't mean me, which is obviously going to happen at some point. It also means replacing our sergeants, or, had we done this in the past, it could have been talking about replacing the captain when he left. So I think that having a good continuity of operations plan, a succession plan, would be very wise for this 24/7 public safety agency. So one of my goals. Next one, a little bit unique, is I'd like to plan probably for the fall to hold a town meeting with the public and the department's leadership team. And so I imagine, high school auditorium, middle school auditorium, leadership team up front, couple microphones, and the public, and come and ask your police officers, the leaders of the department, not just me, everyone who runs the ship, any questions you got. Compliments, concerns, whatever. We'll have some ground rules so no one is there and, being mean to people, that's kind of silly. But I think we can be all respectful adults, and we can actually have a proper town hall forum for our community members to interact with our leadership staff. And so what I will do on my part is not only just schedule that, but work with the leadership team over the next couple months, so they understand how to field a question, how to be responsive in a question, how to be respectful. And I think that'll be a great training exercise. It also allows the future leaders of our department to get face time with the community. So I'm not the only face talking about things about the police department. Let's let all the sergeants, let's let the record supervisor, the dispatch supervisor, let's let them talk to the public about what they do every day and answer the questions that the public may have about what they do and how they do it or why they do that. So that'll be a goal. We had a great time when we did our summertime community picnics 2 years ago. They were a tremendous success. I don't think we could do 3, but I figure we could have one big one. So we'll hold a summertime community picnic. And then my final executive goal is to continue to be a bold and vocal public safety leader that does the following. Number 1, advocates for the rightful employee compensation and benefits for all department employees, ensures that a work product is provided and services are delivered to the public that meet high expectations and standards that are established by my office, prioritizes the safety and respect of citizens and police officers alike, holds staff accountable to the rules, regulations, policies, and procedures of the Department of Police Services, protects the due process and property rights of all employees, including myself, speaks truth to power, including to our elected officials, and leads a safe, transparent, effective, and fiscally sound law enforcement operation that delivers superior traditional and non-traditional services to obviously our residents and visitors. So those are my goals this year. I will keep you updated on them quarterly. You kind of get updated on them every month when I make my reports, but we'll do formal reports quarterly.
Chief, will you invite individual commissioners to confer with you about any of these?
Meaning what?
What part?
Well,
This part?
for example, when you talk about working with the police commission to develop the framework for a department staffing and structure plan, you talked about having sergeants come in and talk in executive session. I'd like to talk about having that not be an executive session, so it's a continuation of what we were doing earlier.
Yeah, so I think it could be two things, right? I think we can have a first line leadership workshop, which is completely public. But I think that when supervisors need to talk to you about how much they need to remediate or mentor specific employees, I think that gets into the performance of an employee.
That
And
should
I
be
think
an
that that's
executive
more
session.
appropriate in executive session.
Sure.
Yeah, but absolutely. I love those workshops. So yes, I think a first line leadership workshop would be great. And I think all the sergeants should present at it.
Well, we learned from it also.
Yeah, absolutely. Right.
For the summertime picnic, how does the commission join forces with you, like in that? Is that something that we?
Well, some of you came and ate
participate in?
hamburgers
We
last time.
don't eat, that's what we do.
Yeah.
Well, I'm
So-
just, I'm just kind of wondering, like, is this a joint effort or are we there?
I think it's more of a department
Okay.
operational thing. I think it's more important for the street police officer or the dispatcher answering the phone to interact with the community rather than more of a political pile of police commissioner. I
Oh,
think
no,
that,
not like, we can attend, that's. what I
oh,
mean.
God,
Oh,
yes, we
okay.
want you to attend.
Not that part, no.
Yeah, I think,
Wants to see.
Carl, you came,
I was
right?
there.
Okay.
You guys, yeah, absolutely,
Okay.
yeah. Come, worst case scenario, you have a hamburger and you talk to some cops you haven't met.
Okay,
You know, so one of my things is you folks are the top box on the organizational chart. I bet you if I handed out pictures of all of our cops and dispatchers right now, that you wouldn't be able to get through 10 of them. And so I see that as a problem in a town this small with a force when fully staffed, 25 full-time police officers and 9 dispatchers. Right? So one of the reasons why I like having them come to your door to deliver the packets is so that you meet them.
Yes.
that's
Right?
nice.
So, I've had this criticism over there. He won't let the cops talk to us. Well, there's a chain of command, but I also sent them to your front door. So clearly I'm not hiding them from you. If I'm saying, can you please go deliver the mail? Right? And so I think it's important that you know who they are because they can't be numbers on a page. They have to be people. You have to see them as moms and dads and brothers and sisters to be able to vigorously support the things Joe was talking about in the beginning of the meeting in the budget, and 90% of it being expenses related to them,
You know, what would be really helpful?
What would be really helpful?
It's like, you know, when you go to school and you have all the pictures, the class pictures, like a box with a name, so I could study the face of the officers and I know them.
Maybe
When I
we
see
could have
them. Does
a
that make
meet and
sense?
greet night.
Well, we've talked about that. And so that could be a possibility, but I think we would do that through workshops. So what we did for quite a while is we had different workshops on different subjects and different folks would come and present. And so that got them FaceTime. The important thing though about that is, and I think some of the commissioners here can appreciate it, when they put their heart and soul into a presentation and they present for a good 40 minutes and commissioners are like, well, let's hurry up, or are there any questions? No. It makes someone who spent all that time feel like they've done it for nothing. So it has to be like this conversational workshop, where there's a back and a forth and some questions. And, I always wanted the commission to look at the people presenting saying, okay, what can we do to make your job easier? Is there something that you need that would make your job more efficient? Or that's the kind of conversation I want my staff to be having with the top box on the organizational chart.
You know, honestly, the workshops were amazing. I think that the ones that took place in the first year, the relationship that we have with you now is completely different.
1000%.
And I think that a lot of that had to do with the less engagement or, just figuring everything out. And I feel bad for the officers and so forth. I understand what you're saying, but
Yeah.
basically, if we were to have different workshops now, it would, I think, be a lot different.
I think I've suggested before, I'd rather have those workshops as a special meeting because I feel like they do get rushed.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
It is, but I think we can dedicate the time now, right? So I think everyone around the table.
Schedule 500 other things on the agenda.
Correct, and we're over the bylaws now,
Right.
right? So it's not like you're on this mission that you gotta get 4 things done and we're fighting it. We're done with that, right? So now maybe we can spend the next year having meetings like that are certainly more engaging and more collaborative. I mean, I think that would be healthy for the organization.
Yeah.
And look, to your point, right? Contrary to what a lot of people think, my staff supports me. They're a little bit protective of me. And so if the 4th Monday of the month is the, inquisition, the congressional hearing, they watch this live or they watch the tape back, they don't appreciate it. And I agree. I think we're in a completely different place now. And you'll see that in their tone as well, which is healthy. I mean, I really wish we could have made more headway on the union's offer to have that conversation before we're at a referendum tonight voting on what I have learned today. People don't even know what they're voting on. Some people think that if you support the police department, you should be voting yes. It's obviously not my opinion. Some people think if you vote yes, Spear is out of here in a couple months. It's all over the place. And I just wish that we spent more time talking to our folks and really explaining, what this was all about. Some people were saying that I endorsed this at the town meeting. I've never endorsed it. And, so some people are going, saying, took care of you, chief. I don't know where that came from, but whatever, comes out, we'll move forward.
Maybe we can do like 3 workshops and, schedule one monthly meeting and just dedicate that to like 3
Yeah,
workshops
I think that's
instead of
fine.
doing anything else.
I think that's fine. I mean, I think there's always gonna be like important business that comes up. Hopefully, we won't have to be voting on hiring anyone. Hopefully, this all works tonight. But yeah,
I have just one comment. Great job on the goals overall. Appreciate them. I especially appreciate the evaluation being put on here. I really do. I think it's time. The only thing that I would caution about is, just like the chairman raised, setting for the December 31st goal is difficult because we faced certain impediments to getting this talked about before, whether it was summertime coming or election coming, So let's try and figure out a good place where this can happen, where we're not dealing with those other impediments. So we can all, you as well, feel good about this.
yeah, I agree. I think that, if we're in the middle of the perf study and we're gathering data and doing interviews, that's just not the time.
Correct.
The bandwidth will be
That
limited.
is-
But I think that once we're past
That is a fair point.
the perf
yes.
study, I think that we certainly can entertain that. And I'm not opposed to before they start, because I would imagine the first selectman will be eager to be contacting them. Remember, he's the only person that's had any contact with perf. So I would imagine that after the results come in, he'll contact them right away, try to sign a contract. I don't know if there's any conversation about scope. None of us know this, right? None of us. So the police commission that has statutory authority over the department has no idea how this is even going to be rolled out, nor have you ever talked to anybody from perf. But I would imagine that they'll take a couple weeks to get going. And my guess is like March, April, May is going to be their data collection and interviews. And then June, July, and August is when they would write the report. I don't know. I do think that contract negotiations, which is our next item, I bet you they're done long before the perf study comes out. I mean, I don't see why they would not be done. The contract expires June 30th. The union has already sent their demand to bargain letter to the first selectman. The first selectman has already met with union leadership and the new union delegates to say, hey, yeah, let's move forward and start negotiating. So my guess is I hope that's very amicable, right? Like, we don't want arbitration. That's just not healthy.
Right.
So if there's no arbitration, there's no reason why the contract wouldn't be done in the next couple months. Which segues into my next thing, which is the union has sent their demand to bargain letter. The first selectman has met with union leadership and the new union IBPO, and I know that they've talked about doing that. some commissioners here have expressed interest in being on the contract negotiation team. I know, Carl, you've been on that in the past. Chuck, were you on it in the past? No. Renee, have you ever done the contract?
No, because it's never been presented to me.
Gotcha.
It was for
Um,
Nene.
So Carl Fortuna, as the chief elected official, statutorily is in charge of all contract negotiations. So he decides who is on his negotiating team. So if the commission desires a role, commissions in the past have sent communication to the first selectman formally to say, we would like to have a role and a seat at the table on your negotiating team. That has resulted in the past, Carl, I think we did that when you were chairman, right? We sent a letter.
We did.
Yep, and then.
We've been on two of them.
Yeah, I think a letter came back and said you could have two people. The commission chose those two delegates and then they were put. So I don't know if he's open to that. I certainly haven't spoken to the first selectman about that. But that might be something that you folks choose to do tonight. So you don't miss the boat on that, if that's something that the commission wants. I think it's a good idea.
But would it be possible to like go and sit there and watch and not have any say?
So
whatsoever?
it's closed.
So learn.
Yeah, it's closed. So you'd have to ask Carl. Carl Fortuna can say, absolutely, he can say the whole commission can come and sit in the audience, right? So both the union
Yeah,
and the town, both sides statutorily, can invite whoever they want to be there. They have to have a purpose to be in the room.
I would just wanna watch and learn.
But I
It does
thought-
happen during the day. I'm sorry, I don't wanna.
Yes, it
interrupt,
does.
But it's, the meetings are during the day.
But I thought last time when Frank and Susan were on there, like you could be seen but not heard, like you could sit in, but you couldn't see.
That is absolutely correct. So what happens is, the first meeting, you set ground rules. And one of the ground rules is each side has a chief spokesman. And those are the only two people that can speak in the meeting, unless the chief spokesman says, you can go ahead and talk. And so normally for the town side, our chief spokesman is Labor Council. And normally for the union side, it's either their Labor Council or their Labor Delegate. So like the police officers that sit on the committee, they're not talking back and forth to Carl, they're like, come on, give me an extra percent. Like, that's not how it works. And they'll set dates at that first meeting. Part of the ground rules will be no one can talk about what's going on outside of those meetings. I mean, it's very, very stringent stuff.
You know, that's why it kind of, they can't talk about it, but yet people can sit there and listen to what's going on.
Only if you're on the team. So if you're on the negotiating team, if Carl Fortuna says, Mark, you're on, then you get to go and listen. And then when that team goes to caucus, you can certainly talk in that room, but you can't sit at the table and go, hey, timeout. I have a proposal that, not your role.
I'm wondering if we can direct the chair to send the communication to Carl suggesting that we would like a seat at the table.
My concern is this isn't on the agenda, and so
Well, it is, it's under police contract negotiations. I mean, so you can direct me as staff to send the communication that we sent the last time this happened on behalf of the commission, requesting that
I
be
think,
involved.
I think we can do it that way.
Yeah, I mean, maybe instead of a vote, you just get some consent. If you don't want to vote.
A consensus, a sense of a meeting.
Yeah.
How many people would we like to,
I think
ask
two
the
is
first
sufficient.
Two, I think, is typical what they've done.
Or maybe
in the
three.
past.
Yeah, I would say
Someone
2 to
gets
3.
sick,
I mean, I don't think it's bad to have 3 of you
just
in
case
the
someone
room.
gets sick.
But is this the same thing as going there just to sit there and like learn and watch?
No,
Pretty much sit and learn and watch.
yeah,
You pretty much, but you learn a lot.
So you don't talk?
you don't talk, you don't talk, but I think
Move
that
on to,
you talk when people are caucusing.
so the union would say, we need to talk, will you leave the room?
Okay.
So we get up and we leave the room, we go to the selectman's office.
Right, and
20
if
minutes
that-
later, come on back in, we come back in.
But at that point, you have input.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes.
I didn't know if it was an off-site
Yeah,
neutral spot.
the goal is, well, we consider this. The goal is to settle a contract without arbitration. So arbitration is a hearing. Arbitration is very costly. So arbitration is a panel of 3 people. The town picks their arbitrator, the union picks their arbitrator, and the town and the union have to agree on a neutral arbitrator. The arbitrators make a ridiculous, sorry if any are watching, a ridiculous amount of money every day. It's not a full 8-hour day. And in arbitration, both sides give their last best offer. And it's the job of the arbitration panel to choose one of those offers, not something in the middle. So if we were discussing salary and say the town said, we want to give the police officers 3%, and the police officer said, we want 5%. The town said, our last best offer is 3. And the union says, our last best offer is 5. They both sides would then present evidence supporting their last best offer. And once that evidence has been received and people have been, have testified and cross-examined, the hearing portion would close, and then that 3-panel arbitration board would decide either to give the police officers 3% or 5%. They can't come back and say, split the difference and be happy. It's only one or the other. And so it's very, very, very expensive to do that. There's attorney fees, so the union has an attorney fee, we have an attorney fee, then we're paying for the arbitrators. There's prep time and, you know, police officers on overtime testifying. So I hope that with new union leadership or new union affiliation and the spirit of goodwill exhibited by our first selectman and all the data that we've given him and the market, that we can just sit down in the room and get it done. I don't even know if I'm going to be on the first selectman's team this year. I hope I am. I have been for every single contract, but we have not had that conversation yet.
And how many days typically does it last?
Usually goes over a couple months, 2 to 3 months. And so they'll pick dates actually on that first thing. It's not every day of the week. It's like, you know, what's good for you? We'll do 2 dates in this month, 2 dates in that month. They'll exchange proposals. Your second meeting will just be an first exchange. Then there'll be a second exchange, maybe a third exchange, and then actual negotiations. And basically what happens is very quickly, it goes all off the record. So anything on the record is part of negotiation history, which can be used as evidence in arbitration if we go there. But if you go off the record, it can't. And that's when you could be like, come on, let's have a conversation. How do we do this? How do we get this done? And I hope we can do that successfully. I really, really do. It'd be great for our personnel, great for the town. It's just time to get this done and move on. So
with that background, how many people think that we should have at least one representative, if not more than one?
I think
Yeah.
3 is sufficient.
But who, like, you should ask who would be interested in being on this, right?
We can,
Well, we don't have to talk about
we
that.
don't have to decide that, right?
Okay.
But what we're talking about is requesting the chief to write a letter saying that the commission would like to have X number
Of
of
representation.
representatives.
Well, you know, if you give a larger number and let
Yes.
them come back and
Right.
say, no, this is what I want. You know, it's always better to ask for more and maybe you get a little less, you know what I mean?
well, the first selectman's gonna watch the video. So, well, I mean, in theory, what does the commission want? Does the commission want, you know, do you want him to invite the commission? Do you want him to?
Well, not everybody.
I suggest 2. I think 2 is more than enough. There's not that much input.
I
And
think
if somebody
3.
can't make it, at least the other person can be there. And as long as you're both in the group, you're allowed to discuss things amongst yourselves.
But it would be really cool, like, what I'm trying to say is I would love to just go and
You wanna
learn
learn.
and see it, I wanna extend it. That's all I wanna do, so if we can get the whole commission or 7 of us or 5 of us, we don't need all of that, but that makes sense.
Mark, would you like to attend?
Yeah, I'd love to attend.
Jane?
I am very interested in doing it.
I would be, but if somebody else would want to, that's okay.
Carl?
I'll pass this time.
I would love to do it, but I don't think my work schedule is gonna allow for
Okay.
that.
That's
Like, so,
fine.
'cause it is tough during the day.
And I
Sure.
work too.
I would like to, yeah.
Okay.
Is that-
I wanna retire.
Me too.
Me too.
It's wonderful. Try it.
No, you got hurt right after you retired. It seems dangerous.
I need to find a sugar daddy if I'm in trouble.
And live in
You know,
Connecticut.
everybody's gotta understand with these negotiations, you can't say anything in these negotiations. Don't think that you're gonna have a say if you're sitting there as a commissioner, because you're not. It's just like when I used to get invited in, because I did benefits. The only thing we heard was just about benefits. We didn't hear about salaries, we didn't hear about anything. anything pertaining to benefits, we went. And then we got to speak when we were asked to speak. And it's gotta be the same way.
Yes.
Every contract comes down to three things: wages, healthcare, pension. Everything else is just, an extra vacation day here, a give back here, it all balances out. It all comes down to what is the general wage increase gonna be? What are you paying in a premium? What are what's the high deductible healthcare? What percentage is the town paying towards your deductible? And what your pension benefits are. And for the last couple of years, both sides have agreed, we'll have a pension study committee. We'll not talk about it this year. And obviously that's the hot button this year. But who knows what happens once negotiation starts?
So if three people, say two or three people do go, are they allowed to come back and can we be in executive session and they discuss what happened? Or is that not, if once everyone's in that room, it's just in that?
So it depends on the ground rules. And so I think what we would do, Renee, because I think that's a great point, is I think that we would ask as part of the ground rules that the delegates from the commission be allowed to brief the commission in executive session.
That typically, well, at least from, my experience, that typically is what has happened, is that people go back to their group and just share the details of what's gone on. And usually, the board or the commission can also give some guidance in terms of, I know you can't talk at the meetings, but behind closed doors, when you meet with council and the first selectman, you can sometimes have input.
Right. And again,
So,
not being the metropolis of Old Saybrook, you could hear something in executive session and leave and call your first selectman and say, hey, I was briefed on this in executive session. Obviously, you can talk about it because he knows all the details. And be like, hey, here's my thought process. Here's my idea. I would imagine the first selectman would welcome that. Why would he not?
They reach out to us as well, like, when we went into caucus, that we were asked if we had any ideas or suggestions or whatever, and then either they were accepted or they were, we don't want to do that because of this. And usually the attorney takes care of since he's the spokesman, pretty much has a good handle on what to do and what not to do. But they're open to suggestions as you go along.
yeah.
And and then the only other thing that I would suggest is whoever, let's just assume the first selectman allows this, which I don't see why he would not. He's always been very open and collaborative during the process. But just understand whoever's chosen, it's not an us versus them in the room, right? Because sometimes I even feel weird, right? These are the folks, the men and women who put up their lives on the line every day that I go to calls with. So I could be in a negotiation setting, disagreeing about vacation time. And the next thing I know, I'm shoulder to shoulder at a critical incident with them. And so I always hate the first time when town's sitting on one side and the union sitting on the other side. There shouldn't be the great divide, right? It's a conversation that has to happen. It's statutory in nature. Employees deserve benefits. You know how I feel about our current benefits and where I think they should go. And I think we should just have a general conversation about it and make sure that feelings aren't hurt. Because when you're talking about people's livelihoods and what they earn and what their cost is, there are some folks that when they sit at the negotiating table and they're talking about healthcare, they're representing one of their child that may have a significant healthcare issue that proper coverage is needed in order for that family to survive. And so it does become personal. And I think too often we make police officers and their leaders more like robots instead of people. And so I think if we can humanize it a little bit, I think it's important.
We had a bad relationship with the company at one time. And so they decided, they got together the week before and they sat every other person when they first met. And it was a company, a union, a company union. And then, when it was time to split, they split. But it was like to get the communication working while your person you were sitting next to, and they did a couple exercises so that they didn't have that feeling, like what you're saying, because that's gotta be uncomfortable for you.
It is. I think there should be food, right? I'm a big fan of breaking bread at these things. There should be a nice tray of Italian pastries, and there should be some pasta and chicken parm, and we should all sit down and just have a nice conversation. And so, maybe I'll bring pizza this time. I don't know, but I will send a letter. Sounds like send a letter. I'll also follow it up with a conversation with Carl and try to give him, if he doesn't get a chance to watch this video, give him the spirit of the conversation. I mean, some of you have tremendous backgrounds in this, right? You did a lot of benefit work, you've done benefit work. Used to do this on the Board of Ed, right? You were in contract
I did
committees.
a lot of contract negotiations on Board of Ed.
Yeah, so I think we need to tap these types of experiences to help the town through it, so. I think enough on that.
Okay. All right, any other questions on the executive reports?
I do have a quick question.
Yes.
For the leadership success in planning,
Mhm.
what's the timeline for that?
Well, so the goals are, over a year.
Okay,
So these in theory are goals that I hope to achieve by December 31st. Doesn't mean that we can't achieve them sooner. It just depends on the bandwidth that we have to, to get stuff done.
okay.
Let's move on to item 6. Discussion and possible action regarding recommendation to the first selectman concerning a bilingual social worker program. This is just carryover.
Yes, and I'll be very brief. So I hope everyone on the commission got the report that was generated a couple years ago on the program, and we'll get a chance to see that. So I sent that around just so everyone would understand we're just not pulling things out of the air. Like, a lot of thought process goes into these things. And all I'm seeking for is the commission to send the Board of Selectmen a communication that says, we endorse this idea. No details, no salary for the person, who should be in charge, what department, none of that. I think that's for someone else to figure out. I'm just looking for this commission to say, we agree with our police chief that there is a need for this. He's brought us a need. We support it. There's no harm, no foul to studying it. And the study should be done by the Board of Selectmen. If the board receives this and says, this is interesting, my guess is their first call will be to Heather McNeil, the Director of Youth and Family Services, very proud partner of our agency, to say, we just got this thing. What do you think about it? Now, obviously, the director and I have spoken about this. We're both in favor of it, but she can give her perspective from her eyes and her experiences and her certifications in her role as Director of Youth and Family Services. And I think that when you have your Chief of Police and your Director of Youth and Family Services sitting before you as a member of the Board of Selectmen saying, this is a need that we have in town. None of us are posturing on whose agency should be in, what color shirt they wear. Like, none of us care. We just know there's a need. And so when we leave a death scene, whether that's an untimely death or that is by the hands of oneself, we want to be able to have someone there to support the family. And we make lots of referrals to Youth and Family Services, but again, they only have so much bandwidth as well, right? They're busy. They're a very busy agency. I'm a proud member of their board, and it is amazing, the reports that we get from Director McNeil on how busy the agency is and what they do for our community. And so we know we need this extra resource, and we know that we need that resource to be able to speak Spanish fluently. It is a need in the town of Old Saybrook. So all I'm looking for is the commission to say, okay, let's send it to Carl and have him please consider it. He can take it and go, I don't consider it. Done. There's no fighting. I'm not going to protest. There's no signs. But I think it should come from the commission.
Can I ask you, you've given us one example of death scenes. Can I ask you to give us some more examples?
Sure, and I've listed them in that report that you all folks had, but certainly domestic violence. And so whether commissioners know this or not, we participate in a program with CCDV where at the scene of a domestic, the victim is actually the police officer hands them their department issued iPhone, and they actually call a counselor while we're there to make a short-term safety plan. But we want someone to be able to follow up the next day. Hi, I'm so-and-so from whatever agency. Do you need any resources? Do you need help? Do you need to go to a shelter? That is certainly one resource. There are other things that happen. There are elderly victims of fraud that need to be contacted maybe the next day not by a police officer, but someone that can help them or connect them to social services. So the way it works now is the police officer makes a referral to social services, and then social services, when they have time, will connect the person. We want to make sure that someone has access to our cases, that I have authorized them to look at our reports and be able to go in, and instead of always it being a police officer referral from another set of eyes, a counselor set of eyes or social worker set of eyes can read an investigative report and go, wow, there's something I can do to help that family. The goal is to help people, right? So it's not your police chief sitting in front of you talking about another enforcement program. I'm talking about a program that will generally help people.
What happens now without this staff?
So I told you, so some of it's police officer referral
Okay.
and some of it's nothing. Just absolutely nothing.
We had said we had 4 Spanish speaking officers, right?
Correct. This isn't to help us translate in our duties. That's not what this is. This person would be an after the fact resource for people who need it. Victims of crime, victims of loss. That's what this is for.
Your staff would be part of this? I'm a little confused.
Sure. So right now, sometimes staff makes referrals. We go to a house for a domestic disturbance. My directive is if we find out that the fighting is over the fact that there's no oil in the oil tank, then we make the connection to social services to make sure that oil gets in the oil tank. If we go to a home for a disturbance or something else, and we find out that there's no food in the pantry, my sergeants know that they can call me and get funds immediately to put food in the pantry.
Right.
Or referrals are made to social service programs, and then youth and family gets involved. But after that, we're out because we're on to the next call. And so I'm looking for someone to continue the chain of service until people say, I don't need you anymore. And so as police commissioners, if you've never needed this type of service in your life, or as the public watching, if you've never needed this type of service, it's hard to understand why it's needed. Sometimes you don't know what you need until you need it. I've been a police officer here for 27 years, and I've been associated with the department since I was in 5th grade, and I'm in my 15th year of being your police chief. I'm telling you, these types of services are sorely needed in the town of Old Saybrook. All I'm asking you to do is not approve it. Just ask the Board of Selectmen to consider it. They have more questions, they can come back. If Carl says, prove it to me, show me all your data, that's my job to the Board of Selectmen, not to you folks.
So it would be like a dedicated officer?
No.
So,
Social worker or counselor.
okay,
Yeah, this has nothing to do with a sworn law enforcement position.
okay, I
This
thought it
is
was
a-
like a liaison type.
No, this is a civilian position that more than likely would be, placed under the roof of Youth and Family Services. And then that would be detailed to our agency.
Okay,
And more than likely, it would be on a consulting basis, not a full-time basis. Right?
And so one of the things that I proposed is maybe they're a contract employee for the first year. That way you can just, if it doesn't work, or you can expand services or do whatever. But there'd be no long-term liabilities associated with a trial program.
I don't,
I got a question. Sure. If you want us to make this suggestion to the selectmen, I think you should give us some data that we can look at data as a group and discuss if we want to even send it to the selectmen. But if we don't know what we're looking at for data, it's kind of useless to send the thing to the selectmen when we don't know anything about it ourselves.
So Mark, with all due respect, I can send the memo myself. Right? I can say, dear Mr. First Selectman, as your police chief, I think we need this. I can partner with Heather McNeil and we both can sign a letter together. What I'm trying to do is involve the police commission. Because I think it's a good thing for the elected commission to say to the town, we've listened to a concern and we have no issue with a bilingual social worker / counselor helping people. That's
I
what
just,
this is
I don't
all about.
understand why this is not more of a youth and family initiative. I understand they're gonna be working with the police department.
So the reason why it's not a youth and family initiative is because we are the boots on the ground that see it firsthand. So Youth and Family Services, obviously, is not responding to the types of calls that we're responding to.
that's why.
They do great work, but we're first in the door. We're seeing it firsthand. And so we are the natural conduit to making sure that there's an extension of services where there's not a great's the wrong word. There's not a solid person dedicated to this every day. And I think that
that's
we
where
need
I got
that.
confused.
Let me ask a question that may ground this some. What is your best estimate of an average monthly incident volume where this kind of resource would be useful?
Well, look at the
Oh, I think easily 10 cases a week. Absolutely, yeah.
Well, I mean, if you just even look at the 2023 report that you gave us, the activity report, there's overall sexual assaults, 33 of them in the year. I mean, even welfare checks, 926, I mean, suicide, 16. Like it goes on and on and on, and I mean, I can see the rationale for this. I just don't know if this is the place for it to originate. And I mean, from what you're saying, I'm feeling a little better about it. But that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Let me try it in a different way, and I appreciate that. I'm helping the commission with a community win here. Instead of Michael Spiro just identifying the need and going around you and sending a memo to the first selectman with the director of youth and family services, I'm involving this group to be part of that win for the community. If you don't want to, I respect that. I'll submit my own letter.
Here's the thing.
Right. Like, I think we're crazy having a conversation about
I know.
that.
No, but it was two or 3 years ago when the commission endorsed this to the selectmen, and it went nowhere. What I'm trying to elicit is what's different now, what more information can we base it on to say, we think you ought to look at this again in a serious way.
Well,
And that's why I asked the question, what's the volume, what's the
makeup of the board of selectmen is slightly different. I think times have changed. I think that there's more of a focus on mental health and behavioral health emergencies today than there was then. And so I think that because that's more of a hyper focus, and the fact that we have our superintendent clearly saying, I think it was an article she wrote, that we've been the #1 district that's seen the highest percentage of new non-English speaking students. I mean, that should resonate with town leaders. And I want to make sure that we deliver services. Just as I make sure that our Santa Claus is bilingual, so that community has access to that happy time, I want to make sure when people who don't speak English and they only speak Spanish, that they have someone that they can rely on when they're in trouble and need a helping hand. Not in trouble like against the law, just difficulty in life.
Well, you give us data for everything. And I feel if you give us data on the specific incidents that we have in Old Saybrook, it gives the commission an easier way to say, hey, yeah, go and do this. But as far as I'm concerned, you're not giving us enough to even bring it to the.
Did you read the report I sent you?
Yes.
And you don't think there was enough data in there? Because it was highlighted as one of the best reports that was handed in the state.
Okay, so
And Jill I'm sorry, not to cut you off, Jill just read some stats.
every single month, we're given how many domestic, like abuse
Yeah,
cases.
I understand that.
Right, so you can add them up at the end of the year and see how many we have, how many traffic stops and so forth. I think that this conversation, you guys are thinking too in-depthly about it and more, like you said, not in a community overall, let's help people type of way. Maybe you haven't been involved in certain tragedies and so forth, and you have no idea what it's like to have a police officer come up to you and help you, and then the next day, nothing will happen unless, like he said, they reach out to social services and then they contact you at a certain point. But other than that, there's no guarantee. And it would be really reassuring for some people to have that guarantee that the next day somebody's gonna call. It has nothing to do with us. And that's the point. These are matters that individuals face on their own.
I just think it's amazing that you know about this and we're all sitting there listening to you like you're the only one that knows what's going on with this.
Well, and that's actually,
Well, that's what it sounds
okay.
like.
Yeah, well, and then
Plus
plus,
experiences.
in terms of the bilingual, there's a lot of people here who don't speak English, and especially in the school system, we do have a lot of new kids and so forth. But their parents and their families don't speak English. And mostly the children will learn it, but the parents don't, or all the, just different families and so forth. if they don't ever speak English, we need somebody there who can call them and contact them. And if they need anything, or if they need support, or they get a flat tire, you know, this person can most certainly, not with a flat tire, that's a bad example, but we need somebody to be able to communicate with them.
So look, from the operation, here's my message. We care about people. I, as the leader of the operation, want to be able to do more for people who need assistance. I am going to write the first selectman a letter about this. I'm reaching out saying, would you like to hold hands and join me in saying, Mr. First Selectman and Board of Selectmen, would you please research this as a possible good thing for the town of Old Saybrook?
Okay, I'm willing to do that. I just think that if we're split on this going forward, what kind of a message is it going to be sending?
I think, with all due respect to everybody here, and maybe it's a communication issue, I think this discussion is disrespectful to some people in town right now.
Can we have this in executive session?
No, this is a public thing. Look, there's people who need help. Whether folks around the table understand it or not, and you've read my holiday message, the difference between needing a helping hand and not needing a helping hand is just a matter of degrees. And none of us around this table know when we're going to change or flip-flop or have someone that we love dearly or a dear friend have that change. What I'm telling you is I've spent my life's work helping people, standing in one of their most sacred spots that anybody has, in their homes, and identifying trouble that we can help with. I want to help more. That's all this is. And the only way that can happen is we have to go to our town leader and say, will you please explore this? Yes, Chuck. Many years ago, we suggested this. The commission said we endorse it and it went nowhere. I do think that society has changed since then. And I think we all can agree that there's much more of a focus on mental health and behavioral health. We are sending people to the hospital at record pace. We're committing them by our statutory authority, mandating that they're evaluated by a physician because they have made claims about hurting themselves or hurting others. That is their own personal business. That should not be divulged at a police commission meeting, just so we can decide together that we agree that if we can give more help, we should. That's all I'm asking.
Well, I'm pretty offended by you saying that we're being disrespectful to people.
You are.
Because we're not being, we're sitting here
I think you are.
as commissioners, and we're just asking you questions. It's not saying we're voting against it, we're not being disrespectful to anybody. And I really think that was uncalled for you to say that.
Well, you've told me.
To me was disrespectful.
Well, let me
All right,
assert
let's
the
maybe take
privilege.
a
You just told me that you were voting no because I didn't give you enough data. When Jill ran off the data,
I
she
said
talked
it'd
about
be
it.
nice if you
Let me invoke the privilege of the chair here and say, I've been making notes. I think there is plenty of basis in the kinds of incidents that we've identified and the numbers that are apparent in the incident reports that you give us.
Right.
To say, this looks like something that the Board of Selectmen should look at. That's all we're talking about.
Exactly.
Not a dollar. You're not even asking for money.
And it's not empire building because this isn't in the police department. So,
I didn't know Empire Building was even a phrase associated anymore, but no, this is not. I'm pretty happy with the empire I have.
No, this is very nice of you to put out, each month.
But that's data, Mark.
Oh, I understand that.
all right,
Well-
so we're all in agreement.
so let's, I invite a motion to authorize the chair to, collaborate with the chief to construct a letter and, endorsing the chief's proposal.
I will make that motion.
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
So the proposal is gonna be that Carl investigates this.
Yes.
That's our hands at that point.
Yeah.
Correct.
We're just saying that we're giving them a permission to do that.
Okay.
An invitation.
An invitation that we can't give him permission to do anything, but we can say, would you please consider this? So,
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed?
thank you very much. I
Before we
appreciate
move
that.
on from that, though, I just want to say something, when, we're saying people are being disrespectful. The disrespect happens once you leave this town and you get to Middlesex Hospital and you do have a mental health issue and they might keep you for 24 hours. Then there's not a bed in the state for people to go to. There's a lot more follow-up besides referring to a social worker. The rest of the system is very, very broken. And I know that's something we can solve in this town, but just so people are aware, I'm talking from personal, things that have happened to me, that the system is very, very broken.
And so Renee, I agree. And so what I envision this person doing is because once we send someone to Middletown, as you described, then we're done, we're out. But this person now, if approved by the selectmen and it gets funded wherever, this person can call the family the next day and the family member can say, I am frustrated. They can't find a bed. And this person can say, hold on, let me help you. Let me see what I can do to help the situation. And that professional can call the professional at North 7 in Middletown, and they can have a collaborative professional conversation. And the town of Old Saybrook is fighting for their residents to get help. That's where I see it, because I agree, it's broken. And I only can do things here on the local level. But if we can get someone that can help push the envelope and really help Old Saybrook families, then I want to do it.
Okay, so we're sending this letter. Will you keep us apprised?
Yes.
Step by step of what actually comes out of it?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I know at one point, but when this was discussed last time, because clearly you're not gonna only have these needs Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. I mean, that's just not logical thinking.
Yep.
Carl was talking about possibly, and I know it would be very difficult to figure it with other towns, but almost like even if it was just this town, like an on-call position. Because like I said, you're gonna employ somebody 24/7, like nobody's gonna be up for that.
So when it was first introduced 2 years ago and the state asked us to do the reports that I sent to everybody, there was the thought, and some cities are doing this, of a counselor riding with a police officer, and they would go to these calls,
I
let's say
remember
a suicidal call, and they would go and talk with the person. What I'm proposing is not that, because it would be such a hit or miss, right? I mean, the person, if you employed them 40 hours a week, like you said, the chances are that the call that they're really designed for.
It's coming at 3 a.m.
Correct, and not while they're working. And so that's why I want this to be a reactive position with a proactive focus, right? So it's after the initial call for service, but jumps right in. And that's why I think a contract employee might work out well. So maybe Carl says, well, let's try it. I'll hire someone under a contract for 10 hours a week. And between Heather McNeil and I, we figure out how that person has access to reports, how they get referrals, how they're doing their own proactive work for those 10 hours a week. I don't know. That's what I want to explore. And I just wanted your endorsement to do it. And so I appreciate that I have that now.
I like helping people.
Yeah.
I like helping people as well. Done it my whole life. Mr. Chairman, the next item is discussion concerning staffing and structure. If you and I can agree to maybe just put that off, we have a lot of work to do in executive session tonight.
We do.
And all that was going to be is me talking about, some conceptual ideas that I don't think we need tonight.
I agree with that.
Okay.
And there was not going to be any action on that item
No.
in any event. I invite a motion that we go into executive session for the purpose of interviewing candidates for the position of patrolman.
Inviting the chief into.
And invite the chief in.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Coming out of executive session, I invite a motion that we amend our agenda to conform to what actually happened. When we went into executive session, we actually ended up dealing with all three of the items in that one executive session. May I have a motion to amend the agenda to that effect?
So, yeah. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Next item. Discussion on possible action to appoint individuals to the position of patrolman. Actually, this would be patrolman trainee.
Okay, I move to appoint Charles Henry to the position of patrolman trainee upon the successful completion of the hiring process at a date and time selected by the chief of police.
So moved. Is that what I do?
Just say that.
Oh, second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I also make a motion to appoint Nicholas Tarfano to the position of patrolman trainee upon the successful completion of the hiring process at a date and time selected by the chief of police.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any further discussion?
No.
All in favor, signify by saying aye. Any opposed?
I have a third motion to appoint to the position of patrolman trainee upon the successful completion of the hiring process at a date and time selected by the chief of police, Daniel Fox.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Unanimous.
And lastly, a motion to appoint Daniel DiBartolo Mayo to the position of patrolman trainee upon the successful completion of the hiring process at a date and time selected by the chief of police.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None.
Okay, and
Okay. I invite a motion at this point.
Hold on.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Seniority.
yes,
Thank you.
we have one more motion, a motion to assign seniority to the individuals hired this evening. Seniority shall be as follows in descending order: Charles Henry, Nicholas Tarfano, Daniel Fox, and Daniel DiBartolomeo. Second.
Second.
Sorry.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? None.
So, Mr. Chairman, very quickly, I want to congratulate the commission and explain to the public watching or who will be watching. What we've done tonight is we have successfully filled every single open patrolman position in the agency. So we have one vacancy, and that vacancy is for the second in command position that we will all be working on filling over the next several months. We'll be talking about that, but we have a name for every single patrolman position. I just want to congratulate and thank the police commission
Yes.
for doing so. This
Well,
is a
thank you for
huge.
your hard work too.
Yes.
You're very welcome.
Next is a discussion and possible action on matters discussed in executive session. I invite a motion that we approve the suggestion made by Chief Spera concerning a stipend to be paid to his executive assistant to compensate her for the administrative work that is performed in connection with the off-budget account for a private duty work and out of the administrative fee that is paid as part of that work. The stipend to be in the amount of $200 per week, effective immediately.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just real quick. Excellent motion. Just to be very blunt for everyone watching, this revenue source does not come from any taxpayer dollars. This is all off budget, and as you indicated, is paid for by the private contractors.
Thank you for the clarification. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None.
Thank you.
Thank you. Comments from the public? I don't know if we have any.
No hands are raised.
No hands raised. Comments from the chief?
Think it's 11:22, sir. That's my comment.
Yes, it's been a long evening.
Successful.
Any comments from commissioners?
I'm all set.
I'm good.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you all for your work tonight.
Thank you.